Hal Kempfer, national security analyst and expert. He joins me. Hal, thanks for being with us yet again. We were previewing this hearing about this time last night here. Let's go into some of these details that we learned. So we heard now from the acting director of the Secret Service, there, Rowe, and he was singing a different tune, it seemed, than Kim Cheadle just last week, offering more explanations, in my estimation, and saying essentially that, yes, we messed up. Is that your assessment of his performance today? That's my first question to you. And still, Hal, something that you and I have talked about, we still see pouring out into the public open this battle, this fight that's very public between local and state law enforcement who were there and the Secret Service who were there as well. Is that helpful overall to the various investigations going on or not?
Well, Andrew, for the first one, I would say Ron Rowe was very much more straightforward. He was very clear. He said, look, I'm ashamed at what he saw. He's been doing this for 25 years, and he got up on the roof and he goes, and he just could not figure out why that was not covered. And that became very clear. And more information, really, he was very forthcoming. Now, there were some members, Josh Hawley being one, that were rather very straightforward. They said, why haven't you fired somebody? Why haven't you fired somebody? And he really kind of went to a little bit to what Director Cheadle had said before she resigned, which is they want to complete the investigation. You know, with a lot of these things, with the human resource process, I mean, these are government employees, they are federal employees, there are certain protections in place. But also he wants to make sure that they have really figured this out before they take any personnel actions. Frankly, what came out of what he said, and certainly what came out of what Assistant FBI Director Paula Bates said, was there were some real problems. There were some real failures. It wasn't quite clear where the personal responsibility was, but that wasn't really satisfying some members of Congress. They were grilling him. But I will say this. One thing I saw was that Ron Rowe was not going to back down. And he was very forceful when he was being challenged. And he came right back and he explained himself, I thought, very well. I don't know if he offended any of the senators or any of the members on the committee, but one will not say that he was a pushover by any means. Okay. He really pushed back.
So, Hal, you saw that exchange there in David Spunt's report about the encryption on some of Thomas Matthew Crooks's communications here. I mean, Hal, this is the FBI, this is the Secret Service. What's taking so long to get into this encrypted information here? We also learned as well more about his social media profile and usage. An account on the social media site Gab was repeatedly brought up. The FBI Deputy Director Abate testified Crooks was motivated by, quote, anti-Semitic and anti-immigration sentiments based on an unspecified social media account from as far back as 2019. Fox, though, is told some data from Crooks's actual social media account says something else. Fox was also told, and Senator Marsha Blackburn asked about this, that Crooks's Gab.com account expressed views which favored Biden, that took a different stance on immigration, and it advocated for COVID-era restrictions and lockdowns, so much so, Hal, that the founder of Gab has disputed the FBI claim about, quote-unquote, suspected Thomas Crooks' account, saying the Gab account in question is, quote, unequivocally pro-Biden, and in particular, pro-Biden's immigration policy. Does that bode well for the investigation that there's still so many questions on his social media usage that a suspected account on Gab is being disavowed by the founder of Gab, saying, no, that wasn't Crooks' account?
Well, I would expect that if the founder of Gab to be a little defensive about his social media site, and that's not a surprise. What was kind of a surprise is they're digging into it, and they find generally the site is a little bit further to the right, shall we say, and I think that's what the founder said today. They tend to be a more conservative site, but basically what they're saying is he had a sort of a pro-Biden profile on that site, which is really a little confusing, especially when you look at some of the stuff further back where he was looking at anti-Semitic things and things you would consider more with the far right, but he had a pro-Biden profile. So that's not clear exactly. It really did not clarify his state of mind at this point. I think the thing that is really tough is, and this is the issue with encryption. There is some very good over the counter, if you will, but openly available commercial encryption systems out there that are very difficult to crack. This is not the first time the FBI has had to deal with this, and it takes time. It is painstaking. It is time consuming. They have to work with other agencies sometimes to do this, and it's very, very difficult. And these encryption systems, in many cases, if you can't get in there, it can literally erase all the data depending on how it's set up. So they're being very careful on how they do this. Now, I should go back one thing I should mention, and you asked this right up front: the issue between the Secret Service and local law enforcement. The Secret Service has got to be very concerned about that. They depend on local law enforcement to do their mission. And I'm sure there are those in there that are looking at this. Yes, the building was under the area that was secured by local law enforcement, but you're already seeing this finger pointing going back and forth. And they're saying, look, we didn't get the brief you said. And of course, Roe came out and said, you did get the brief, or not the head of that unit got the brief, but not everybody in the unit got the brief. This back and forth is going to cause a lot of tension. And I think they're going to have to manage this very carefully as this comes out, because certainly the stakes are very high on the outcome, but they have a lot of protection details, especially this fall, that they've got to work through, and they can't have an open battle, if you will, between the Secret Service and local law enforcement, or they're going to have bigger problems in the future.
So it's not just kind of the finger pointing on the question of this Gab.com profile. It's also finger pointing between local and state law enforcement and the Secret Service. The Secret Service today denied that snipers saw Crooks 20 minutes before the shooting. They also acknowledged and admitted today, they being the Secret Service, that snipers did not know about or see Crooks until the shooting happened. I think that's significant as well. Also, what was gleaned today from some of these, exchanges in the testimony, that they did not necessarily perceive a threat. That's why they didn't rush Trump off the stage. That's why they didn't tell Trump not to take the stage here. I mean, that tracks. If you're not seeing, you're the Secret Service and you're not seeing the sniper on the roof until shots were fired, what would have led you in the first place to say Trump can't take the stage? I mean, the logic didn't follow.
Well, and I think that Roe put this very clearly. He says, look, we have suspicious individuals at events all the time. All right. And that's not unusual to have at a big public rally or something. Individuals doing things that are suspicious or unusual that raise the interest of local law enforcement. What they didn't have was there was an armed individual out there. And that's what came out of his testimony today was they didn't know there was an armed individual. They just thought the local law enforcement was tracking down someone over around that building that was suspicious. That was all they had. And of course, the snipers didn't have him in their, didn't know about this. Now, one thing that came out that I thought was really big, and I was a little confused myself as to why didn't the Secret Service have a drone or a counter drone system? And he explained that. He said they had connectivity issues. Normally that thing had been employed. And if it had been employed, he even went so far as to say if it had been employed, there's a good chance they would have found out, they would have picked up on Crook's drone activity a couple hours before, well before the event took place, but also that they would have tracked that back to Crooks and they could have prevented the event from happening. I thought that was some pretty compelling testimony. And he's going back, and that's one thing they can go right back and look at. They said, look, we've been relying on commercially available connectivity to do these drones. We need to have our own autonomous system. And I was really surprised they were relying on commercial means, that they didn't have an autonomous system to fall back on. Yeah. And so that's actually a big thing they're going to fall back on. And I just say this because, and we've talked about this, drones are the next big thing. We've seen it in all forms of conflict, all forms of armed conflict. We're seeing it with assassination attempts. Sure. It's the next big thing. And I think the Secret Service is going to have to raise their game a little bit into the drone and counter drone world to really employ these on a more robust level, if you will, to deal with the threat environment.
I mean, Roe said the idea of counter drones keeps him up at night. It was somewhat of an implicit acknowledgement that, the service itself is not equipped to handle that. I thought that was very telling. In the meantime, Hal, you and I discussed still yesterday how there isn't much information about the weapon and how Crooks got the weapon up on the roof and how he concealed it. This was the answer today by Paul Abate there at the FBI. He says this: "We do believe he likely had it in his backpack, broken down in the backpack. We're still assessing that. Our lab has taken it. It looked at the rifle itself," he said, "and measured that against the backpack itself. And if he placed it in this backpack, it would extend outside. It would have been visible." So really no movement yet on that question. How did he conceal the weapon to get it up on the roof in the first place there as well? Did you find that telling?
I found that very interesting. It really is not. It still hasn't answered the question completely. And I'm going to leave it up to the FBI. If they got the backpack, if they've broken down the weapon, put it in the backpack, taking it out, doing all those other things that you do, I will rely on them to come up with the more conclusive evidence of whether he could have pulled that off or not. I still believe, though, and I'm not saying, look, Brooks is not what I would call a highly trained or skilled individual in this regard, but he knows enough about weapons that knows that when you take it apart and put it back together, things can go wrong, especially if it's in a high stress situation. And so I do believe that they need to look very carefully to see if he had it hidden. But with that said, if the FBI cannot find any indications on the ground or anywhere around there where he would have had it hidden, or if a weapon or something of that shape or size was being hidden, then I'm going to have to rely on them to ferret out those details. They're going to say, hey, he broke it down this way and did it this way. I would sure like to see that demonstrated, how he would have put it together quickly. Look, high stress things where you're doing something like that, and I have to believe that Crooks was under a lot of stress when he was doing something like that. That's where you drop things that you have to pick up. You find there's a lot of things that can go wrong with that, and so I think he would have an intact weapon. But again, I'm going to rely on the FBI to figure that out.
All right, Hal Kemper, we're going to have to leave it at that. We always appreciate your insight as these various investigations are ongoing and unfolding and seemingly competing with each other. Is that an accurate assessment at this point because there are so many probes?
I would call it unsettled. The data has to settle down.
Okay.
All right. And they're looking at a lot of, there's competing hypotheses, and there are more conspiracy theories on the internet than you can shake a stick at. It is amazing stuff out there. I'm personally thinking that it was not reptilian alien creatures that did it. So I'm with them on that. But just about every other theory is out there. I think they're really starting to settle down on who he was, how he did it. There's still some questions outstanding, but they're getting a lot closer to what that is. I think when they can get into the encryption, when they really can break into all the encryption system, that's going to provide us some answers that we're desperately needing, particularly for motivation. That's what I want to find out.
So just another question on the political motivation question. Does the information that was gleaned today on what this Gab account said when it comes to anti-immigration, anti-Semitic rhetoric, the Gab co-founder is saying, no, there was pro-Biden rhetoric on this. Does that lead investigators ultimately to a motive or not? I mean, how are we to take those pieces of information? Are we to put it as a puzzle piece in the overall picture of Crooks's, political leanings or not? Will they use that to determine or establish a motive?
Well, they're trying to build a profile of who he was and what motivated him to do that. And right now, I think there's some investigators that are scratching their heads going, man, this just does not add up yet. We can't figure it out. So I think that's what they're trying to work through right now. And again, kind of go back to the encryption thing. If they can bust the encryption, I think they can on some of these other accounts. I believe that will provide a much fuller picture that will explain his motivation, why he did this, why he was incentivized, if you will, to go do such a heinous act.
All right, Hal, thanks so much. We're going to have to leave it at that. See you soon.
Okay. Thank you, Andrew.
All right, in the meantime,